Have you ever watched someone speak multiple languages fluently and wondered how the heck they did it? Maybe you've spent years trying to learn a new language, but still freeze up every single time you try to order coffee on vacation. Well, what if I told you that most language learning methods are actually designed to keep you away from becoming fluent? That's right. The traditional method, like classroom study or grammar drills or textbooks, they're all just the slow road to nowhere. Today, I'm sharing with you the science-backed methods that are actually used to help thousands of students across the world achieve fluency in months, not years. And if you stick around to the end, I'm actually going to share with you the number one thing that sabotages just about every single language learner in getting to fluency. Let me tell you about Alex. Alex spent 4 years studying Spanish in high school, 2 years in university, and uses language apps like Duolingo daily. But when Alex finally visited Madrid, something kind of embarrassing happened. Despite all that studying time, Alex couldn't hold a basic conversation with a native. When he finally had his shot, he froze and wasted the opportunity. Why? Because just like you, Alex was learning about the language instead of learning the language itself. Now, there's a fundamental difference between these two approaches to learning a language. On one hand, we have the natural way that the brain acquires a language, and on the other hand, we have the unnatural academic way that we study or learn a language. Think about it this way. How did you learn your first language ever? Even if you did eventually learn things like grammar rules and vocabulary lists, the chances are you learned that language through the language you already spoke. Now, the research here is actually pretty clear. Thanks to Dr. Stephen Krashen, we understand this. We acquire a language when we receive something called comprehensible input. Essentially, this is just saying language we understand basically through the surrounding context that accompanies that language. Now, that doesn't mean that you understand every single word or really any word necessarily, but it does mean that the context clues you in into what the words mean. And you know what? This actually mirrors the exact way that children learn a language, the way that they can speak fluently before they can even read or write. They listen, make connections, and then start speaking, all without any sort of formal education. So here is where most language learning fails. It focuses on output before significant input. That's like trying to build a house without having any actual materials. So let me now break down the exact steps that will help you get fluent in 2025. Number one is massive comprehensible input. You need to flood your brain with language that you mostly understand. Now, how do you do this? Well, let me give you a couple options. Movies and TV shows in your target language, YouTube videos made for beginners in that target language, or podcasts designed for language learners. But here is the critical part that most people miss. No subtitles. Now, I get asked this question a lot, maybe tens of times every single day. I know this sounds counterintuitive, but subtitles actually keep your brain lazy and keep you away from acquiring your target language. When you have subtitles, your brain immediately grabs onto the easy option, reading in your native language as opposed to working to figure out the target language and what the actual words mean. Instead, you should select content that is mostly understandable, and you can get the understanding through context and the surrounding actions or pictures on the screen, but still presents a challenge for your understanding. After all, your brain is an incredible pattern recognition machine if you give it the chance to try. I understand people saying to me, well, how do I understand anything if I don't understand any of the words that they're saying? Again, your brain will figure it out from context, provided the content is not too challenging. Step 2 is strategic vocabulary acquisition. Now, while immersion is going to build a strong language foundation in your target language, we need a strategic way to get vocabulary and put it into our brains. This is where digital flashcard systems like Anki or Memrise come in. Now, on these flashcards, you're not going to make the typical flashcards that you might be used to. The key is connecting new target words directly to concepts and not translating. For example, if you're learning Mandarin Chinese, when you see the symbol for shu, you want your brain to think of a tree, not the English word for tree. This eliminates the translation step that slows so many language learners down, especially when they're beginning to start speaking their language. Step 3, the sculpture technique. When you start actually producing the language out of your mouth, think of the production process kind of like sanding down a piece of wood. The immersion phase that you just did gets the raw materials into your brain. But to speak fluently, you need to repeatedly sand down that material, sand down and sculpt that wood until it gradually takes the right shape. And how do you sand it down? It's through speaking and receiving feedback. Like I say, it's the gradual process of producing a sound and then having feedback from a native speaker that will gradually have that sound more and more like a native speaker yourself. Each conversation, each correction, and each successful time that you actually say a word all represent different pieces of you becoming more and more fluent. Most language courses get this totally backwards. They have you speaking from day one, which is kind of like trying to build a wood sculpture without any wood. Now you might ask the question, okay, but how long does this process actually take? Well, following a method like the one I've outlined today, you can actually achieve conversational fluency in months rather than years. And I know that because I've done it. Of course, if you want to hear me speaking Mandarin, you can check out some of my other videos or go over to Dashu Mandarin's channel where I have a full hour-long interview with them. Now, if I were to boil this down, the key is daily immersion. Even just 30 minutes of immersion a day will drastically transform your brain's ability to understand and eventually produce a new language. And here's what's incredible. Your progress might feel slow at first, but then it will suddenly feel exponential. Many learners, including myself, feel this sudden breakthrough when everything just starts to click. Now, on that point, I want to share with you the biggest mistake that language learners make in general, and that is inconsistency. Language acquisition and this entire process is kind of like compound interest. If you keep making small contributions, eventually the yields are massive, but only if you don't keep withdrawing your progress. 20 minutes every single day beats 3 hours once a week. Your brain needs regular exposure to form the neural pathways that'll eventually have this whole process just become automatic for you. Okay, so what's your action plan? First, find some comprehensible input resources in your target language, which are easily found on YouTube. Second, commit to about 30 minutes a day of language learning, but do not use subtitles for your immersion. Use a spaced repetition software like Anki or some other one to take vocabulary that you encounter while doing your immersion and putting it directly into your brain. Next, seek out some sort of native speaker that can give you feedback for when you do begin to start outputting. And lastly, I recommend that you track your immersion hours because I believe that what gets measured gets accomplished. I should mention there are a ton of steps that could go into this, and you can make it infinitely more complicated if you just want a step-by-step plan that's done for you that you can just follow all the way to conversational fluency. Then just check the link in the description. Language learning doesn't have to be a years-long journey of frustration. By working with your brain's natural language acquisition mechanisms instead of against them, you can achieve in months what many people seem to fail to achieve in years. Remember, children become fluent speakers of their language before they can even read or write. Follow the same natural process: massive comprehensible input, direct concept connections, and gradual output practice. Remember, when you fill your ears with a language, it eventually overflows into your brain. And then when it overflows in your brain, it begins to overflow out of your mouth. Now, after hearing that you should be immersing in comprehensible input content, and you either don't know what that is or don't know what counts as comprehensible input, then check this video right here where I tell you exactly the kind of content that you should be watching in order to get your comprehensible input. See you in the next video.